Hello everyone, how are you doing today? Well, today I'd like to talk about a couple of subjects I had on my mind. And the first one is about negative thinking and how it sabotages our own lives. The second one is about lying itself and how lying has become the norm. So, I should say that lying has become acceptable, that we have allowed ourselves to stop seeking actual truth for the sake of believing what someone tells us. This is nothing new, but in today's world it's very ever present. First to talk about this negative aspect of thinking, you hear this a lot, and whenever I talk about negative thinking, I'm careful to define my parameters of exactly what I mean by that, because I have a totally... There's an old saying, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, and I'm sure many of you have heard that. And I used to believe that, and I still do, but there's another side to that, is that if you don't stand for something and you're ignorant, you can fall for anything. And what that means is that if you don't have an establishment of your own values, your own moral code, then you're liable to fall into someone else's and let them rub off on you as far as your opinions will be altered by another person's surety about themselves. This is no clearer seen than in cults, for example. You know, a cult leader, he's promising people something, and so people flock to him, not knowing better, you know. But as far as not standing for anything, I feel like when a person has developed a certain amount of insight about the world, and when you've done enough study and you've learned enough about people, you're still never nearly, I mean, there's no way a person can ever attain enough knowledge to really get a full picture. But when you get enough of a picture, you start to realize that if you do stand for something, you better be damn sure about what it is, and you better be damn sure that it's right. So, many of the things that I thought were absolute and factual when I was younger have turned out not to be. There was a time in my life where everything that I had learned up to a certain point as a child came to a halt when I realized that, oh my God, you know, humans have corrupted history, that we have a completely skewed view of what really happened. And there's so many cover-ups and hidden agendas, conspiracies, and CIA and government tests on their own people, on and on down the rabbit hole. And eventually I started to say, well, I can't believe in all the crap I've been taught. I need to start looking deeper. And then years later, I started realizing that once again I'd been duped. It's just like falling down the alien rabbit hole, where you find all these great videos of supposed UFOs and alien autopsy or whatever it might be, and then you find out years later that it was a hoax. And it's heartbreaking, because I was I'm not saying that aliens and UFOs don't exist. I'm saying that a majority of the evidence lets you down. How about Bigfoot? I think it was the Patterson film. I think it was the Wright Patterson film is what it was called, if I'm not mistaken. And it was considered the be-all, end-all of evidence for Bigfoot, Sasquatch. And I live in the Pacific Northwest, right down the way, you know, an hour's drive from where they supposedly filmed that, I believe. I have always been fascinated with the idea of a Sasquatch or an ape in the woods. Sure, when they came out and said that they had faked that film, it was heartbreaking to a lot of Bigfoot hunters, you know. They were like, well, shoot, what evidence do we have? And then later people would come out with these giant shoes that they would wear to make the footprints. Does that mean the Bigfoot doesn't exist? No, of course not. And here's the thing. Most truths, or I should say most illusions have a little bit of truth to them. If enough people flock towards an idea, generally there's a grain of truth within there that has started to grow this plant where branches are in disarray and nobody really understands the full complexity of it. And we forget about that main root thing. And so at a point you kind of let go of what you think was true, what you think was real. So I guess I ended up covering the lies part first. I might as well go into that. You know, the idea that even people in charge and people that we consider our leaders and representatives can now lie blatantly. And instead of covering their asses, they can just say either I didn't say that, or Well, I did say that, and I still believe it's true. I mean, we have new terms like, you know, alternative facts, and I remember Rudy Giuliani a while back, I just saw this clip where he said, truth is not truth. And I thought about that for a minute. I thought, well, what's happened is that there's a lot of bullshit being exposed in the world. And because of that, a lot of people want to protect their interests. And due to that, there's a lot of confusion and misdirected finger-pointing and hostility towards the wrong people. Whether it be pointing at the liberals, or pointing at the conservatives, or the blacks, or the whites, or the Mexicans, everybody feels like they're somehow being penalized just for being them. In other words, life is hard, life is complicated, the world ain't fair, and so therefore there's a lot of argument among what's right and what's wrong. And it's really hard to say this is absolutely the way things should be, and this is absolutely the way things shouldn't be. So, I guess that's all I can really say about it. To me, truth is one of the most important things about being a human. That's one of my values that I hold dear. I won't lie just to make myself look better, any more than a small white lie. You know, everybody talks about the 12-inch fish that they caught was a 16-inch fish, or the, 10-pound salmon was a 30-pound salmon. Those kind of little white lies, or like, the old tall tales. That's not the same as a lie. A lie is designed to deceive for the sake of covering up something that somebody doesn't feel, that they agree with, whether or not it's true or not. So, truth, is it subjective now? Do we get to decide what's right and what's wrong? No, because there is a three-dimensional reality underlying all of our delusions that will continue to go on regardless of what we think. So, have values, have strength, have morals, but remember not to make absolutes in your mind, because if you do, you're going to have to back them up. And often this leads to not just arguments, but violence. And am I saying that there aren't ideas worth defending with violence? No, of course there are. I mean, that's, when it comes down to our personal rights, we have to. So, lies are just something that we've always been exposed to, but now that we can prove that they're lies, it doesn't seem to make a difference. The second thing I wanted to talk about here was, as I said, was negativity, and it's in the sense of how people tend to find the worst aspect of something. And I've noticed this many times, I think most of us have, over the last several years on YouTube especially. My first example, as a simple one, would be that you tell someone, hey, wow, it's a beautiful day out here, sun's shining. And their response is, yeah, it's supposed to rain tomorrow. That's just a small glimpse of the type of mentality that I'm talking about. The person may mean well, but their mind is directed to look for the fault. It's a protection against getting too comfortable. It happens in relationships too. But well, let's give another example. If you say, the healthcare industry is amazing, look at all the great things it's done. And at the very least, antibiotics have saved countless lives. And somebody would say, yeah, well, they're all trying to kill us, and it's all profit anyway. Pharma just wants to make a buck. And what about MRSA? We've caused MRSA now, this, resistant infection. And they may not even realize they're doing it as well. When we grow up in a world where we have good health care, we don't think much of it. We're not dying of polio in the States here, so we're becoming crippled at the very least. But that could change over time, the way that people are going with their anti-vax crusades. But to each his own. I think we're up to like 40 cases in my city here of measles, and they're all unvaccinated. So it's one of those things where even though you're faced with the fact that, oh wow, vaccinations can prevent this, it's still, oh, but pharma, look at pharma, and look at this case, and we're hand-selecting particular cases that define our point. And so, let me give you another example of a negative response. If you say, wow, being alive today is amazing. We have so much extra time to do great things, and we can, write books and create art, and we don't have to work in the fields and toil all day long, and we have lights so we can read at night and do things. And their idea of that is, oh, well, they are just dumbing us down. And people say, they are dumbing us down, that look at television, it was created to dumb us down, and the internet was designed to dumb us down. Really what people are saying is that, I feel dumb because I'm not doing anything with my time constructive. So therefore I'm going to assume that everybody is being dumbed down the way I am. And that's just not the way it is. You know, my time online, for example, or reading books, I'm reading and researching and learning about things. Does that mean it's better than reading a novel that's fiction? No. It's just, that's what I choose to put my time into, because that's what's interesting to me. But we're only dumbed down as much as we allow ourselves to. We have more information at our fingertips than ever before. So if we're dumbing ourselves down, it's our choice. I have a couple on my list here of, comments and responses that I might expect to hear. One would be like, a good example is, choices are hard to make in life. And another person's idea of that is, nothing really matters anyway. They become nihilistic and choose to just not make choices. Choose to not choose, if you will. And it took me a while to see this. When I was younger, I was under the impression that everybody was being suppressed and dumbed down, and that, we didn't have a chance to move forward because the rich were rich and the poor were poor, and that's the way it was. Until I realized that my illusion that the only rich people are the ones that were born into wealth, and that nobody can climb the ladder themselves, was complete nonsense. The people who move up, they work their asses off to get there. Which is another example, like Warren Buffett, for example. You might say, wow, he's altruistic. He's donated over 90% of his money, he says, to charity through his life, or some large amount like that, and he's in with a group of billionaires that are all, altruistic, want to share and do things, but it doesn't matter how much money you give. There will always be the person that says, well, they have a hidden agenda. They could buy countries, and they could destroy entire economies. And it's like, they could, and they have power, and they have money. But does that negate the positives? Do the negatives outweigh the positives? Does it really matter, But there's a lot of finger pointing that goes on like that. A simple one would be to say, look at these people, they seem happy. And another person would say, well, they're just ignorant. They're just ignorant to the truth. They don't know what's really going on. If they only knew what was really going on, then they'd be, miserable and upset like me. And so, everybody's got their own level of what they're willing to tolerate. I think one of the best examples I would have would be when you say relationships are difficult and they take a lot of work. Some people's idea of that was just, all people suck and I refuse to make the effort and I won't change. Therefore, that's what they're really saying, is that I refuse to compromise, I refuse to change, I refuse to lower myself in the discussion to the level of the person instead of thinking I'm all high and mighty. And it seems like the more arrogant a person is often, quite often, is really just covering up for their own insecurities. And it's something that, once you realize that there are confident people, and then there are arrogant people. And arrogance is caused by a lack of understanding. Confidence is a true understanding, to an extent. And where would I consider myself along that spectrum? I really don't know. I'm not fully confident. I have a lot of insecurities about myself, just like everyone does. But to even say that, it's, I guess, opening up my, basically admitting a weakness, if you will. And that leads to more understanding. When we understand ourselves, then we understand others better. And ultimately, does it all matter? If it doesn't matter to you, then it doesn't matter. But it matters to me, because I'm trying to live as comfortable of a life as I can while making it comfortable for those around me. And in order to do that, I have to acknowledge when I'm seeing things through a negative lens. And I refuse to do it. So, is it really negative and positive in the sense of good and bad? No. But how does it make you feel emotionally? In other words, do you have certain conversations with people online or in person that make you feel like the other person just doesn't want to hear your version of things, or they're not interested in it, or does it even really matter in that case? We ask ourselves, what are we trying to prove anyway? Generally, I won't push my ideas on anybody and say, this is what is truth. But if somebody comes to me and says, hey, have you heard about this, or this or this, and I'll say, well, I actually don't believe that. And it's funny, somebody left a comment a while back on a different video I saw. It was funny. It said, globe-tards don't understand that the earth is flat. Just look at a map. He was joking, obviously, but that was the kind of rationale that people have towards things like that. Like, I refuse to look at anything except for what's right in front of my face. This is what I believe, this is what I think, and screw all y'all. And sometimes it's best to walk away from people like that, because you have nothing to prove to them. If they don't want to learn or discuss or understand, then that's their own choice. But what's more interesting is I find that the people who believe the most extreme things, when I disagree with them, tend to come back with, well, you must be an Illuminati agent, or I've been called a moon agent. That when I said that the moon is real, I mean, this was years ago, that I was called a moon agent, that I'm here to protect the truth that the moon must be real because it's a projection in the sky, according to some of these people. And so I'm not trying to poke fun at crazy beliefs, but rather say, don't tie up your time with trying to argue with people like that. They're stuck in their own reality, and there's not much you can do about it. Hopefully they find their way out. Often when we believe extreme things, it's because it makes us feel comfortable and we fit in with a group. It allows us to think that we know something that others don't, and psychologically that's a major benefit to people. When you feel like you're left out, when you feel marginalized, or you feel like you haven't done anything that you really feel proud of, or learned anything really that moves you, then finding something, a conspiracy group that says, hey, look, we know, come on in. It's almost like going into a cult in a way. So, but at any rate, ask yourself, what's the value of the knowledge you're getting? What is the value of the knowledge you're getting, and what are you going to do with it? And how are you going to put it to good use? And often that will eliminate some of the darker aspects of our beliefs. So that's my ramble for the day. Hope you are all doing well, and have a wonderful, beautiful day wherever you might be.